If you waited for something your whole life, would you still want it if it came with a heavy price? Chidinma sat quietly under the mango tree, watching the village children play. Her heart ached as she placed her hand on her belly. She was 9 months pregnant. For years she prayed, cried, and visited every healer she could find. People had started to whisper that her womb was empty. Her husband, Okechukwu, stood by her, but even he had started to lose hope. Now, after 10 long years, her joy had finally come, but fear held her tight. The village of Umudim had a law, a cruel one. Any child born with the white skin of an albino must be taken away. They said such children brought bad luck. Some even believed they brought death. Chidinma had seen it before. A woman named Neka had once birthed an albino. She left the village the same night and was never seen again. Chidinma still remembered her screams. The memory haunted her. Now, as her own delivery day drew close, the joy she once felt turned into fear. What if her baby wasn't like the others? That night, as the moon lit the clay walls of their small hut, Chidinma couldn't sleep. Her husband lay beside her, snoring softly, but her heart beat fast. She placed both hands on her belly and whispered prayers. Please, God, let my child be safe. Let my child be accepted. The room was quiet, but her thoughts were loud. She thought of the shame, the stares, and the fear that would come if her baby had light skin. How could she carry a child the whole village would hate? How could she love someone the world wanted her to leave behind? Tears rolled down her cheeks as she imagined what might come. The night felt heavy, like it was hiding something, and deep in her heart, she knew something was coming. The sun had not yet risen when Chidinma felt the sharp pain shoot through her body. It was time. Okechukwu rushed to fetch Mama Neka, the village midwife. The pain was strong, but Chidinma held on. She bit her lip, her hands gripping the edge of the wooden bed. She had waited 10 years for this moment. Now, the baby was coming fast. The small hut smelled of herbs and hot water. Mama Neka walked with skill and care, whispering prayers between her breaths. Chidinma pushed with all the strength left in her tired body. Then, the cry came, loud, sharp, alive. The baby had arrived. But when Mama Neka lifted the child to the light, her eyes widened. She did not speak. She just stared. Slowly, she wrapped the baby in a cloth and handed her to Chidinma, her hands trembling. Chidinma looked down at the tiny face. The baby's skin was light, pale like fresh yam. Her eyes were pinkish, her hair soft and golden. Chidinma froze. Her worst fear was now real. Her daughter was an albino. Okechukwu came in, smiling at first, but his smile dropped when he saw the baby. Chidinma, he whispered, but she said nothing. She just held her baby close, her tears mixing with the sweat on her face. The silence in the room was heavy. Mama Neka stood still, unsure of what to say. In Umudim, a child like this was not allowed. Everyone knew the rule. Chidinma's heart broke in that moment, not because of the fear, but because even in that fear, she had already fallen in love. For 2 days, Chidinma did not let anyone enter her hut. She told Okechukwu to say she was still resting. She did not want visitors. Not even her closest friend Adaora was allowed to come near. Inside the hut, the baby girl slept quietly in Chidinma's arms. She named her Nwamaka, meaning, "My child is beautiful." Every time she looked at her baby's light skin, she felt a mix of pain and pride. She knew Nwamaka was innocent, but the village would never see it that way. They would call her a curse. They would demand her child be taken away. Chidinma remembered what happened to another albino child years ago. That child had been dragged from its mother's arms and disappeared. Since then, no one dared speak of it. Now, that fear had come to her doorstep. Okechukwu was worried. "We can't hide forever," he said in a low voice. "The elders will soon ask questions." Chidinma looked at him with tired eyes. "Then let them ask. She is my child. But even as she spoke, her heart was shaking. She knew the village chief, Ezemadu, would not let her keep Noamaka. The chief was a strict man who believed in old rules. He once said albino children brought hunger and disease. If he found out, it would be over. That night, Chidinma covered the windows with cloth. She kept the baby close, afraid someone might hear her cries. Her only light came from a small oil lamp. In the quiet, she whispered promises to her child. "I will protect you," she said, "even if I have to run." By the third day, the village was buzzing with curiosity. Chidinma had not been seen, and no one had laid eyes on her baby. In Umudim, it was tradition for mothers to bring out their child after 2 days to receive prayers and gifts. But Chidinma stayed inside. At the market, tongues wagged. Why is she hiding? Someone asked. Maybe the baby is sick, another said. But Adaora, Chidinma's closest friend, felt something deeper was wrong. She had tried to visit but was turned away. She's not like this, Adaora whispered to her mother. Something must have happened. As the sun burned over the red earth, rumors spread like fire. Some said Chidinma had gone mad. Others said the baby was strange. A few even guessed the truth. What if the child is one of them? A woman murmured near the yam store. Everyone went quiet. That night, Adaora stood outside Chidinma's hut. She didn't knock. She just stood there, listening. Inside, Chidinma rocked Noamaka gently, humming a soft lullaby. But her heart was heavy. She knew people were talking. She had seen the curious eyes from her window. Okechukwu had warned her. Soon, the elders will come. Chidinma closed her eyes and tried to block it all out. Her baby was sleeping peacefully, unaware of the storm outside. But Chidinma knew peace would not last. The village was waking up to a truth she had tried so hard to hide. And when that truth reached the wrong ears, nothing would ever be the same again. The knock came early in the morning, loud, firm, final. Chidinma froze where she sat, holding Noamaka close to her chest. Okechukwu opened the door and met the serious eyes of 2 village messengers. One of them handed him a folded palm leaf letter. The chief had summoned them. Chidinma's heart dropped. The letter meant one thing someone had told. Someone had spoken the words she feared most. The child is an albino. As Okechukwu read the message aloud, Chidinma felt her knees grow weak. "You are to appear before the elders this evening," he said slowly, his voice low and troubled. Chidinma said nothing. She just looked down at her baby's innocent face and wondered why people could hate a child who hadn't hurt anyone. That evening, the village square was quiet but full. People gathered, whispering and staring. Chidinma walked slowly, her head high but her spirit shaking. She wore a plain wrapper and carried Noamaka on her back. Okechukwu walked beside her, silent. At the front sat Chief Ezemadu and the council of elders. Their faces were cold. The chief didn't greet her. He went straight to the point. "Is it true?" he asked. "Did you give birth to a cursed child?" Chidinma looked him in the eye. "I gave birth to a child. She is my daughter. Her name is Noamaka." Gasps filled the air. The chief's face tightened. "You know the rule. No child like that can stay in Umudim." Chidinma felt the crowd pressing in with silence. Her arms tightened around her baby. For the first time in her life, she realized she might lose everything just because her child was born different. Chidinma knelt before the elders, dust rising around her knees. Her baby slept quietly on her back, unaware of the storm in front of them. The chief looked down at her without pity. "You have broken our law," he said. "You know what must be done." Chidinma's voice trembled, but she spoke from the depth of her heart. "Please, she's just a child, my only child. I waited 10 years for her. She has not done anything wrong." The elders exchanged looks. Some avoided her eyes. Others stared at the baby with fear. One elder stood and spoke. "We have followed this rule for generations. Children like these bring sickness and death. We cannot allow her to stay. Chidinma's tears flowed freely. Then punish me, not her. Ban me, beat me, do what you must, but let my daughter live. The crowd watched, silent. Some shook their heads, others turned away. No one stepped forward to support her. The chief raised his hand, and the square grew quiet. You have until the next moon, he said. You must leave the village, or the child will be taken. Chidinma gasped. Okechukwu opened his mouth to speak, but stopped. The chief had spoken, and his word was law. As they turned to walk away, Chidinma felt the weight of her word crumble. Her legs felt heavy, her mind spinning. She had hoped for mercy, but mercy had no place in Umudem when fear ruled the hearts of its people. That night, back in their hut, she packed her small cloth bag. The oil lamp flickered beside her. She looked at Nwamaka, still sleeping peacefully. I will not let them touch you, she whispered, even if I must walk into the forest and never return. It was late, long after the crickets had begun their songs, when a soft knock came at the door. Chidinma was awake, sitting beside her sleeping baby. She hadn't slept since the chief's warning. Her heart jumped at the sound. Carefully, she opened the wooden door just enough to peek. It was Adaora. Chidinma opened the door wide and hugged her tightly. Tears came rushing. I heard what they said, Adaora whispered. Is it true? Is the baby really? Chidinma nodded slowly. Adaora stepped in and sat beside her. She looked at the tiny sleeping child, wrapped in cloth. She's beautiful, Adaora said, eyes wide. But they won't let her stay. Chidinma shook her head. We have until the next moon. Then we must go. The room was quiet for a long time. Adaora finally spoke. Then we will find a way. You're not alone, Chidinma. I don't care what they say. That baby is not a curse. Chidinma's eyes filled with tears again. For days, she had felt so alone. But here was Adaora, her friend since childhood, now risking everything to be there. Where would I go, Adaora? Chidinma asked. I have nothing. No land, no money, no safe place. Adaora took her hand. There's a woman in the next village in Sude. Her name is Mama Ifeoma. She once helped a girl run from here years ago. She hides people. Chidinma's heart skipped. Do you think she'll help us? Adaora nodded. I'll go first. I'll find her. But you must get ready. You can't stay here when the moon changes. That night, for the first time since giving birth, Chidinma felt hope. Faint, small, but it was there. And sometimes, a small hope is all a mother needs to keep going. The next morning, Chidinma moved quietly. She didn't want to draw attention. She cleaned the hut, washed her few clothes, and packed the little she owned into a small raffia bag. She wrapped Nwamaka carefully and tied her on her back. Okechukwu watched her in silence. He had barely spoken since the chief's warning. You're really going? He finally asked. Chidinma looked up, her eyes tired but firm. I have no choice. I can't let them harm her. Okechukwu sighed and looked away. I didn't think it would come to this. Chidinma wanted to say many things, but there was no time for long talk. Adaora will come back with news. She said there's a woman in Sude who helps people like us. Okechukwu nodded slowly. If it's true, then we must trust her. That night, Adaora returned. Her face was sweaty from walking, but her eyes were bright. I found her, she said quickly. Mama Ifeoma. She lives in a small compound by the big tree at the village entrance. She said she would take you in, but you must come before the moon is full. After that, it may be too dangerous. Chidinma's hands trembled. The full moon was only 2 nights away. That meant they had to leave the next evening. Okechukwu didn't speak much, but he began to gather dry food and a bottle of water. Chidinma held her daughter tighter that night. We're leaving soon, my love, she whispered to Nwamaka. I don't know where we're going, but I know it's better than staying where they don't want you. She looked around her small home walls she had built with her husband, the place she once dreamed of raising her family. Tomorrow, it will no longer be hers. The village was quiet. The moon hung low, not yet full, but bright enough to light the paths. Chidinma tied Nwamaka snugly on her back, wrapping extra cloths around the baby to keep her warm and quiet. Every creak of the wooden door, every crunch of footsteps on the red earth made her heart race. Okechukwu carried the small raffia bag. Adaora led the way through the back paths, away from the market square and village center. "We must go before anyone wakes," she whispered. Chidinma nodded, holding her breath as they passed familiar huts. Her chest tightened. Each house held a memory of laughter, of birthdays, of blessings. But now, she was leaving all of it behind, not as a traveler, but as someone fleeing shame placed upon her by people she once trusted. Nwamaka stirred gently, but did not cry. Chidinma kissed her baby's head. "Good girl," she whispered. They moved fast and in silence. The journey to Nsude was not long, but walking at night made it feel endless. Adaora kept looking over her shoulder, afraid someone had seen them. Once, they heard a distant cough and froze behind a tree until the sound faded. Chidinma's legs ached, but she kept walking. Okechukwu wiped sweat from his forehead. "Just a little more," Adaora whispered. Finally, they saw the big tree Adaora had spoken of. A woman stood near a small clay hut under the tree. She held the lantern and waved them forward. "Mama Ifeoma," Adaora said in relief. The woman looked at Chidinma and then at the bundle on her back. She didn't ask questions. She simply opened her arms and said, "Come inside, child. You and your baby are safe here." At those words, Chidinma almost collapsed from relief. She had finally found a place where her daughter would not be feared. Inside Mama Ifeoma's compound, everything felt different. The air smelled of dried herbs and smoke. The walls were made of thick clay and the floor swept clean with palm fronds. There were no loud whispers or judging eyes, just peace. Chidinma sat on a mat, holding Nwamaka close. For the first time in days, her body relaxed, but her heart was still heavy. Mama Ifeoma brought warm pap and a cup of water. "Eat, you need strength," she said gently. Okechukwu sat near the doorway, quiet as always. Adaora rested in a corner, her eyes closed but her body alert. Mama Ifeoma watched them. "You're not the first," she finally said. "And sadly, you won't be the last. But you are strong, Chidinma. Many mothers gave up their babies to keep their names clean. You didn't. That means something." Chidinma looked up, her eyes red. "I didn't do it because I'm brave. I did it because I love her." Later that night, as the baby slept, Chidinma stepped outside and looked up at the stars. Her village was only a few hills away, yet it felt like another world. She thought about her mother's grave, the mango tree she used to sit under, the laughter she once shared with neighbors. All gone. Her home had rejected her. She wondered if Nwamaka would ever understand why they had to leave. Would she grow up feeling unwanted, different, cursed? Chidinma touched her baby's tiny hand. "You are not a mistake," she whispered. "You are not a curse. You are the answer to 10 years of tears." But deep down, she still feared the future. The village had turned against them so easily. Would other places be any different? Could a mother's love truly protect her child forever? 2 days later, a young boy from Sude ran into Mama Ifeoma's compound with fear in his eyes. "They are looking for her," he said breathlessly. "Men from Umudim. They passed the river, asking questions about a woman with a pale-skinned baby." Chidinma's blood turned cold. Okechukwu clenched his fist, and Adaora stood up immediately. "They'll try to take the baby," she said. Mama Ifeoma nodded. "We don't have much time." She quickly gave Chidinma a small bag of supplies, dried food, water, and a wrapper. "You must go deeper into the forest. There's a small farm settlement past the old stream. People mind their business there." Chidinma looked down at her baby, who was sleeping peacefully. She had just started to feel safe, and now she had to run again. Okechukwu took the bag and helped Chidinma tie Nwamaka securely on her back. Adaora hugged her tightly. tears in her eyes. I'll stay here. If they come, I'll delay them. Chidima couldn't find the words. All she could say was, thank you. They slipped out through the back, moving through narrow bush paths. Birds chirped above, and dry leaves crackled under their feet. But danger felt close. Every sound made Chidima jump. Okechukwu whispered, just a little more. Hours passed like days. When they reached the stream, they crossed it carefully. The trees were thicker now, the air cooler. Finally, in the distance, they saw smoke from cooking fires. A small quiet community appeared, hidden between hills. They had made it, but for how long? The new settlement was small but peaceful. Thatched roofs sat neatly between cassava farms and banana trees. Smoke from cooking fires rose into the sky, and the laughter of children echoed through the valley. Chidima and Okechukwu stood at the edge, unsure of what to expect. A middle-aged woman with a baby on her hip noticed them and walked over. You look tired, she said kindly. Come and rest. She offered them a stool outside her hut and called to a young boy. Fetch water for our guests. Chidima sat slowly, her legs aching from the long walk. She felt Nwamaka stir on her back. The woman leaned forward and picked at the child. For a moment, Chidima froze, waiting for the usual gasp, the wide eyes, the question. Why is her skin so white? But instead, the woman smiled. She's beautiful. Looks like she carries the sun in her skin. Tears welled in Chidima's eyes. She hadn't expected kindness. She didn't know how to receive it anymore. Thank you, she whispered. The woman, whose name was Ijeoma, brought food. Boiled jam and palm oil. Many of us here left other villages, she explained. Some because of war, some because of tradition. This place is for starting again. That night, under the stars, Chidima lay beside her husband and child in a small hut the community helped them prepare. For the first time since giving birth, she slept deeply. There were no knocks on the door, no meetings, no threats. Just the sound of insects singing in the bush and the steady breath of her daughter beside her. Maybe, just maybe, they had found a home where Nwamaka would not be feared, but loved. Morning came with the sound of birds chirping and farmers preparing their tools. Chidima stepped outside the small hut, carrying Nwamaka in her arms. The air was fresh, and the hills rolled gently into the sky. She sat on a rock beside a cassava field and looked down at her daughter. Nwamaka stretched her tiny arms and yawned. Then, slowly, she looked up at her mother and smiled that soft, white smile that made Chidima's heart swell. It was her first real smile since birth. In that moment, Chidima felt something shift. All the pain, the fear, the running, it faded into the background. You're happy? She whispered. You feel safe. The baby cooed softly, reaching for her mother's face. Chidima kissed her forehead and closed her eyes. That single smile was worth every tear, every night of hiding, every insult. Later that day, the women of the settlement gathered at Ijeoma's hut to meet Chidima properly. They brought gifts, dried fish, groundnut paste, baby wrappers. One of the older women touched Nwamaka's hand and said, "She will grow up strong, mark my words." Another added, "Her skin is different, but her heart is the same. We welcome her." Chidima looked around, tears forming again, but this time they were not from sadness. For once, she was surrounded by people who didn't look at her baby with fear, people who didn't whisper behind her back, people who saw her daughter for who she was, not what they feared she might bring. That night, she sat beside Okechukwu and whispered, "Maybe this is where our story starts again." One cool evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, a boy from the next village arrived with a folded palm leaf letter. He asked for Chidima and placed the letter in her hands. She looked at it carefully. The handwriting was familiar. It was from Adawora. With shaking fingers, she opened it and read, "My dear sister, the chief is gone. He fell ill 2 weeks after you left. Some say it was a sign from the gods. The new chief is younger, and he listens. People are talking now. They say what was done to you was wrong. Many regret staying silent. I told them about Nwamaka, how beautiful she is, how you ran to save her. Some people cried when they heard. The village is changing, slowly, but it's changing. I just wanted you to know you are missed and you were never forgotten. Love, Edaora. Tears dropped onto the leaf as Chidima read the letter again and again. Okechukwu placed his arm around her. Would you go back? He asked gently. Chidima shook her head. Not now, but maybe one day, when Nwamaka is old enough to understand. She looked at her baby, who was playing with a small calabash in the sand. She was safe. She was happy. That was enough for now. Years passed. Nwamaka grew tall and bright. Her skin still cut stairs, but in the quiet community between the hills, no one treated her like a curse. She learned to walk, then talk, then sing. Her laughter filled the air, and her hands loved to touch flowers and paint with red earth on the clay walls. One day, the community held a naming celebration for new babies. Chidima stood with other mothers. But when it was time for Nwamaka to speak, she stepped forward and said loudly, "My name is Nwamaka. It means my child is beautiful because that's what my mother always called me." The crowd clapped and cheered. No one whispered. No one turned away. After the celebration, Ijeoma hugged Chidinma. "Your child has changed hearts," she said. "Not just here, but even in your old village. One day, more mothers will fight for their children like you did." Chidinma smiled. She looked up at the sky and whispered a quiet prayer of thanks. Her journey had been hard. Her heart had been broken, but she had protected her daughter. And in doing so, she found a new home, a new strength, and a new story. One that would one day be told to every woman afraid of giving birth to difference. A story that begins not with shame, but with love.